Georgia football rumors are heating up as a Georgia Football Insider reveals the top flip targets for the Georgia Bulldogs that we will be pursuing as the season goes along, and we got to break it all down. What's up, guys? I'm Matt Long. Welcome to Georgia Football 365. If you are a Georgia Bulldogs fan, please hit that subscribe button. Only 10.2% of viewers are subscribed to the channel, and it really helps me out a ton. But let's jump right into what we got for today, because 24/7 Sports' Benjamin Wolk, the Georgia Bulldogs insider, put out a list of the top flip targets for the Georgia Bulldogs, and we got to get through it here. Starting off with Nate Carson, who was, if you were paying attention to recruiting over the course of the offseason, you would know that Nate Carson was a guy that was linked to the Bulldogs over and over and over again. But unfortunately, when he eventually ended up committing on July 3rd, he ended up picking the hometown South Carolina Gamecocks. However, we are hearing that the Georgia Bulldogs are not backing out of this recruitment just yet. Coming from Benjamin Wolk, Nate Carson at one point in time was thought to be the next to commit type of guy for Georgia. He then took an official visit to South Carolina, and the trend started to move towards the home state team by the end of the month. Georgia isn't in desperation mode to add any more offensive linemen in the class, but if the right one presented itself, the Georgia Bulldogs will pounce. So what we know about Nate Carson is he already has a pretty decent level of interest in the Georgia Bulldogs, which is obvious why. Georgia is, just want to think for a second to double check it before I say definitely, but Georgia is definitely the best offensive lineman factory in all of college football. Every single year, Georgia has some of the biggest offensive linemen in the country, rivaling the size of even most NFL teams. Nate Carson has the ability to switch inside or remain outside for the Georgia Bulldogs. You would imagine, being 6'4", 290, we would probably put him inside, but he is a top guy that Kirby Smart is going to remain to have interest in over the course of the season. It's going to be close because you can see hometown Columbia, South Carolina. That's where the University of South Carolina is, so that is a bit of a problem. But Nate Carson is a top recruit, very, very impressive. 24/7 Sports has him ranked inside the top 200 of best players in the class of 2027. The consensus has him just outside the 250, but everyone has him ranked as a top 25 offensive tackle in the class and a top 5 player in the state of South Carolina. Nate Carson is a 4-star recruit, would be a big-time pickup for the Georgia Bulldogs, joining what is already a really strong offensive line class. Remember, everyone that Georgia has committed for the offensive line is offensive tackles. Technically, we're going to move some people to inside once we get them on campus and decide who's going to be moving inside, who's going to be sticking outside. This is how we keep such a tall offensive line. We recruit tackles from high school, move them to the inside. Let's move on to our next name here from Benjamin Wolk's list, who is going to be Poole, who is currently committed to the Florida State Seminoles. We watched him commit mid-July on July 17th, 2026. He is from Macon, Georgia, so this was an in-state name who unfortunately decided to go out of state, but there are two things that are floating around this commitment that makes us feel like Georgia has an opportunity and could be motivated to go after Poole. First of all, Georgia only has 2 defensive backs in the 2027 class. They are Seth Williams and Adrian Cole. They're both safeties. They're both very good. They're both 4 stars, just like Poole here, but we still need to add more defensive backs in that class. Now, it might just end up that we get to January and Kirby Smart decides we're going to make that a transfer portal position, and we're going to go get corners and defensive backs out of the transfer portal. And that's perfectly fine by me. I trust Kirby Smart if that's the plan. But you would like to put some more talent in the pipeline to be developed by the Georgia Bulldogs down the line. So first of all, we have the motivation with the lack of defensive backs in the 2027 class committed. We have the motivations to go out and add more DBs to that class by trying to flip to Poole. And then a reason on the other end is why he would leave Florida State. Florida State is not a great program right now. Historically, they're tremendous. But right now, they've been really, really awful for back-to-back years. 3 years ago, they had that tremendous season where they finished ranked 5th, and we played them in, what was that that was the Orange Bowl, right? Where Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers went scorched earth on Florida State. That was a great game for the Georgia Bulldogs. But what we're trying to say here is Florida State is a school that one more bad season, Mike Norvell could easily be out of there, and their recruits could decide to go somewhere else. So should Florida State go belly up this year, Georgia, the hometown team, with a need for defensive backs, Deshaun Poole makes a ton of sense. This is a recruitment that I would be pretty shocked if we've heard the ending of, and Georgia is certainly going to be trying to make some moves here. Next name here, a name that we've talked about a lot, Eric McFarland III, a 4-star wide receiver currently committed to Texas A&M. He's been committed there since June 28th. 5'8", 177 pounds, 4-star recruit, ranked in the top 50 according to consensus, top 10 wide receiver in the class of 2027, 6th best player in the state of Florida. When it comes to wide receivers, I'm just going to say it, Wolk put Eric McFarland on the list, and I trust our insiders because they have more inside information than I do. That's why they're called Georgia Football Insiders and I'm not. But historically, looking at the way that Texas A&M has been able to recruit the wide receiver position versus the way that the Georgia Bulldogs can recruit the wide receiver position, even if Georgia is the significantly easier projection to win football games and to be highly competitive and go to the playoffs, go to the championship, I still have more confidence in Texas A&M's ability to recruit high school wide receivers more than I do for Georgia. It's just has not been a priority for the Bulldogs over the past couple of years. I don't really expect that to change this year. So McFarland was on the list, so I wanted to bring him up, but not someone I would expect to be a name that would be coming up for us. Now, here's a name in Kamarui Dorsey that you would expect Georgia to come back up in. Another Texas A&M commit. He's been committed since November 1st of 2025. Safety, 6'3", 200 pounds, from the state of Georgia, coming from Hampton, Georgia. 5-star recruit. This is one of the top defensive backs in the country, top players in the country. 13th best player consensus, number 1 safety in the class, number 2 player in the state of Georgia. Much like Poole from earlier, or similar to Poole, but even more with Dorsey, I can guarantee everybody watching this video that we have not heard the end of Dorsey being linked to the Georgia Bulldogs. Being a top 3 player in the state of Georgia, the number 1 safety at a position that Georgia can add more to, there are so many reasons why the Georgia Bulldogs are going to continue to recruit Dorsey through the whistle and try to make this flip happen. On to our final name here is going to be DJ Jacobs, a name that we talked about, I believe, in the last video. But DJ Jacobs is consensus number 3 overall recruit in the 2027 class. 24/7 Sports is number 1 player in the 2027 class. He is a player that has been linked to Georgia, currently committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes. He is 6'5", 240 pounds. He continues to be linked to the Georgia Bulldogs by insiders. However, this is another player, much like the wide receiver that we talked about earlier, where I just don't fully understand why he would flip to the Georgia Bulldogs, because it's Ohio State versus Georgia, and the recruitment strategies behind these two schools are very similar. It is, they don't win bidding wars. Georgia doesn't win bidding wars. Ohio State doesn't win bidding wars. But what they do is they can confirm that you will be competing for national championships your entire career at that school. Look at this year. Take your pick. Is Ohio State going to be better? Is Georgia going to be better? The answer is nobody knows. So both of those schools, very competitive. They're both amazing at developing edge talent. Georgia puts out a ton of edges to the NFL every year. Ohio State puts out a ton of edges to the NFL, maybe not as on a regular basis as Georgia does, and maybe they haven't found the same level of success, but they develop them at an elite level still. So that's another connection that Georgia doesn't have. You may be looking, what about the proximity to home? Roswell, Georgia native, Georgia Bulldogs. Well, the thing is, DJ Jacobs, on December 29th, when he decided he was going to commit to the Ohio State Buckeyes, Georgia was still the hometown team at that time. So I have to imagine things aren't going to change in that way. Something would have to happen with the Ohio State on Ohio State's side, which is likely not going to happen. Coming from Benjamin Wolk, Miami and Tennessee have been the primary mentions when it comes to a potential Jacobs flip. It makes sense. Miami came in second on the first go-around. Tennessee's defensive line coach Rodney Garner coached Jacobs' father in college. So DJ Jacobs is being connected to other schools than the Georgia Bulldogs. Him being number one on the list, I had to put him in the video, but I do think that the Georgia Bulldogs are way behind in this recruitment. And until some sort of crazy unforeseen change happens, DJJ will be leaving the state of Georgia. If he's going to flip, it would more likely be to the Tennessee Volunteers. That's the school that's making a lot of noise for him right now. That's what I got for this video. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video all the way through. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Go Dogs!